we were discussing earlier on in regards to hopefully some of the people that we've uh, interacted with over the years that on various different jobs and stuff that we mentioned the likes of Phil last time, didn't we? And
Mm.
we had a bit of a reminisce about all the people that played pretty significant roles in the Alps stuff, didn't we? And whatever. And there's potential that they might want to come in and talk to us, and we can come and talk to them and whatever. Because I say, like, there's there's been quite a number of people who have done that role, that either have their own versions of what they did and how they did it, or can participate in the chaos of what we did. Um, so
That's something like we'd always sort of mention throughout times where there were, my background obviously is DJ, and I work in the clubs, and I knew loads of doormen from the clubs, and over the years, I would cross paths with them again, not on jobs, but just in life. Or maybe I'd reach out to them and say, "Do you want to come on this job?"
yeah, yeah,
And I think a lot of them were really confused, like, why is this DJ asking me to come and do a security job? They had no idea that I'd moved into security. But then also they were really sort of reluctant, loads of them, to step out of their comfort zone. Like it surprised me how many people in the security industry just stick to doing the same types of security jobs, and maybe they're not aware that there's actually a wide variety of stuff they can do, or if they are aware of it, they just don't want to do it.
yeah. I think. Well, I mean, we I think if you uh, I suppose in some respects you have to look at it from their perspective as well, don't you? Um, you and I and quite a few of the other people are quite interested in stepping out of their comfort zone and going and doing things that are a bit out of not necessarily the most normal thing. I mean, you were a DJ and you went and signed up to do one of the toughest CP courses that existed at the time,
Mm,
with no understanding of or knowledge of what the security industry was.
yeah,
And it goes back to the recruitment days that we would do. The moment someone found out that there was some sort of physical, um, it wasn't even like an assessment. It was just there was a physical aspect to doing the part of the interview. Whether it
mm,
was a run or some push-ups or something. Um, they bailed. They didn't. They put their application form in. They go on the system. You get through it. You get to email them. This is what's going to happen. And the moment they found out that there was a some sort of physical element to it, they just they bailed. They couldn't do it.
mm,
Um, so and let's be fair to that to a lot of people as well. It's like you took a risk. You came and did the job. You came out to the Alps and spent X amount of years out there doing it. And but realistically, you took a gamble. There's a lot of people out there that when this random company that has very vague descriptions of the job and very vague photographs on their website says to you, "We will take you. Um, you turn up to this airport, you get on the flight, you get to Geneva, we bus you to this place.
yeah,
We'll pay for your accommodation, your travel. You get a ski pass, ski hire, and you get paid to be there." It doesn't always sound as real as it could be. Do you know what I mean?
no, no. I think the thing is, it's like when I talk to people who aren't, don't know really anything about security, they just think of the stereotype of like, oh, there is the guy that does the door security on Tesco's and supermarkets. That's what they
Yeah.
think of when they think
Yep.
of security, and then they think of a nightclub bouncer. That's as, and then maybe they think of like a security guard on some kind of like building site,
Yeah. Yeah.
just sat in a little hut or something like that. Those are the only things that people think of layman's terms, security. And there's so much more to it than that. But then even within the security world, people who actually do security jobs, it's like there are people out there that think that's just all there is to it. Because that's what I'm saying. When I would go to some of them, do you want to come on this job that I've been doing? We needed people, we were recruiting. I'd explain to them exactly what it is. We're looking for people to come out to the Alps and do this and do that. And they'd be like, no, they didn't get it. It's really weird. It's like they just wanted to kind of like play it safe and just, no, I'm happy with my door, once every few nights, just do my door. And I'm going,
yeah, I mean,
do that as your bread and butter, I understand. But then, like, do you not want to just come and, like, do... Because it was obviously a season. So it's like, do you want to just come and do a week just to spice it up a bit, just try something else? And they didn't want to. I always found that strange.
yeah, I mean, I think, but maybe in some respects that goes on to that sort of conversation we've had previously in regards to, um, for in the security world, it's quite apparent that there is two types of people. There are people who it is a career for them. It's a profession. They act like professionals, and they do professional jobs. They do their own self development. They go on as many courses or jobs as they can do. That networking, etc. And then there's people that it's a job and it's to pay the bills. And if they've got their regular job that pays them X amount of pounds per week, and it is it's. I mean, I got into it as a job.
Yeah.
Like I was sick and tired of doing what I was doing, and I thought, oh well, this might be a way of making money. When I first started, and I just found that I don't know what it was. I was good at it, and so I took it it became my profession. Do you know what I mean? It went from a job to a profession, and I went and over the years I've done many different courses, many different qualifications, um, and think the people who treat it as a profession maybe take some of those jobs that aren't necessarily all black and white on paper. You don't necessarily there's no script for them. They're the people that end up getting um, the CP tasks that people told you didn't exist because they go because they're available, they're ready. They they Are we having a bit of technical difficulty here?
I can hear you, but your picture's frozen. But I can live.
That's all right.
Yeah.
Cool. But anyway, they that's how I ended up getting some of the jobs that I got was I was available and I said yes to them. I didn't, that's how I ended up going out to the Alps, was that I I answered it.
It's like mindset, personalities, isn't it? Like I say, there's some people like myself that I'm not scared of doing something different. Throughout my life, not just with jobs that I've had, career, but just experiences. Maybe I have lost you.
I've still got. I can still hear you. Yeah, can you still hear me?
Yeah, it basically just came up and said, Emmett has stopped recording. But I think it's telling lies. It's telling lies, mate.
Yeah.
As long as you can hear me.
Yeah. Take a brief pause. Take a brief pause, and we'll just quickly sort this out.
I don't know how to sort it out.
I'll try sort something. 1 second.
Okay, I'll pour another drink then.
Yeah.
You going to start and stop your thing? Well, whilst Emmett sorts out his technical difficulties. Oh, he's back. He's back.
Back. I don't know what happened.
Yeah.
But we're back.
I'm going to have a Crystal Head vodka that I believe is fake from Pasta de la Casa,
A job.
which it was one of the resorts that we did the ski job. Well, I did it in. You never came to that one, did you?
No, I never did.
I wish I'd done that one with you, that resort with you, because that was like a crazy resort. That a weird place, so
You
weird.
you be you became our Passa della Casa
Ambassador.
Andorra specialist.
Yeah, yeah, that one. Because so I think I did three there, three, pretty sure. And each
Yeah.
and every time I did one there, it was there was always something weird happening. But it was just such a weird place. So it's like Andorra, which is in between Spain and France, isn't it?
Front. Yeah. So Andorra's technically its own. It's a principality, I believe. I want to say Spain actually, rather than France.
Yeah, because they spoke French and Spanish there. I'm pretty sure, and it was like a tax haven.
Yeah.
So that's why they had this duty-free booze. You know, you'd go into these shops. Like every shop there is just like a duty-free booze place, but it's got every booze that you've ever seen in your life in this place.
The strange thing with Andorra though is I think the fact that it's got low taxation or no taxation on these things is
Mm,
that you can buy as much as you want of those things in Pass and in
mm,
Andorra, but you can't leave with them. If once you leave and enter Spain or France, you have to pay the tax on it because I remember as a child we went to Andorra on a day trip.
mm,
We drove up in a car and we bought all this stuff and we got stopped by the police on the border.
mm.
Which and they ultimately confiscated everything that we'd bought because we didn't pay the tax on it. I don't know whether it was legitimate or if it was a scam, but
Sounds about right. I mean,
um,
I think the thing that was good that they took the students there and they loved it is because when they were there, they could buy the booze super cheap.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
they were walking around with just bottles, like huge. That was the
yeah,
funny
yeah,
thing though, is like they could have basically for the week that they were there bought really expensive night, well, good quality booze for cheap. You know, it's like
yeah.
this is your chance to buy a Nebuchadnezzar or whatever it is
Of Grey Goose.
of Grey Goose and walk around drinking that for like €30. But they would still buy the cheap shit booze. These
Yeah, yeah.
students, no class. These people, I tell you.
No,
Like,
that's it.
whereas myself, I bought the Crystal Head vodka, super
Yeah,
cheap. But
I
then
smuggled it out by the sounds of it.
maybe I paid the tax on it. If anyone's listening, I paid the tax on it, all officially. But this was years ago. This has got to be like 8 years old now. And I've still got it and not drunk it because I don't know if it's fake or not. You remember I was saying it's got this weird petroleum like
Yeah,
taste to
yeah.
it. So if I go blind during this podcast, we'll know. Um,
Blame the Andorran government.
that's it. Yeah, blame them for their cheap
Um,
cheap booze. But yeah,
but yeah, I never did Andorra. I never made it out there. So we relied on you to be an Andorra guy.
yeah. It was like me. I did it twice with one guy, and then another time with another guy. And I think was it Gary? Gary did it on his. Oh no, it was Dave, wasn't it? Dave did it on his own,
He did,
and
yeah,
then
yeah. He was a one man deployment at one point. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, this guy Dave did it on his own, and then I went there the week later to meet up with him. That was the first week that I'd done. Um, but yeah, I always wanted you to come out and do that job with me because it was just such a good place to work. There was, lots of sort of like interesting things would happen. You wouldn't have a boring shift, you know.
Mm.
Um, mm,
Yeah, what were we saying? Oh yeah, it's obviously um, we were sort of on the discussion in regards to like the sort of trying to get people to come on the job, and we've had this issue, because say acquaintances of ours that they see they see you doing it, and they even ask you how you've got there and how you're doing it, and then you
Mm.
say, well, come and do it. Like we get you on the job and come and just do the interview or whatever you need to do, blah blah blah. And it was still such a difficult task to get people to commit to coming to do it.
Mm.
Um, because I think, like I say, it was a bit out of the comfort zone. It was one of those things of it was a little bit unknown in some respects.
Well, if you
Because
think about it,
you couldn't really write down the job description.
no, but I swear over the years I had more luck recruiting non-security people to come and work on our jobs than I did security people, because
Yeah,
sometimes there was a need for stewards, so they didn't need a license, so therefore we could have them on the job, or even we needed like an admin person, didn't we, to work in our what we call
yeah,
it, like
yeah,
our
yeah,
office, or something like on-site office, which was a tent, but we needed like an admin member of staff. They always seemed pretty keen and would give it a shot, whereas like the security people that I know, I could never convince them to come and do it.
no, no, and unfortunately, it's the but you find it on the lower level jobs. You find it on the more Gucci high level jobs, don't you? Like
Mm.
some of the ways that I got the jobs, some of the ways that you got the jobs was that you were available. You were like that. We knew, and we'd worked out quite quickly into the security industry that the job is not going to revolve around you. Like if
No.
you're not available on that hour to leave, you're
Mm.
not the right guy for the job. You can have all the qualifications in the world, but if the job is on this date at this time and you're not available, then someone else will be.
Yeah.
Um, so it was one of those things that and I appreciated. Say it was we sort of created this job that was a little bit too good on paper for people, and it was difficult to create a job description
Mm.
for it because like some of the jobs that we would some of the instances that we would have on especially the student babysitting type resort support jobs,
Mm.
um, we were expected to be security medics, um, social worker, counselor,
Mm.
plumber,
Mm.
door repair specialists.
Oh,
Um,
mate.
I remember I remember one of the first. This must have been a year before you started, but I remember, and again, and it's also dealing with it in a slightly, just to explain, it's not hostile. It's what you got sort of on a nighttime. It can be quite austere the environment out there, and
Mm.
dealing with medical situations when that's not necessarily what we were there for. But a lot of the CP guys, a lot of the people who we brought out had gone into the medical sector, either privately or through a trust, or had some experience. Um, that got called on quite a lot um, because the night in a ski resort, you're probably on a good day, on good weather, in an evening, 2 hours from a functioning hospital. Um, in the daytime, a ski resort is well equipped with all the doctors, nurses, X-ray, MRI, everything you need to
Mm.
get you up and down. But if you were on a nighttime, you had a medical incident. Um, there was there's no like ambulance sort of coming for you. Um, they're an hour and a half down the mountain. It's snowing. The roads are blocked, so it could be 2 hours, 3 hours down the mountain, depending on how quickly they can drive and whatever. And if the road's blocked, the road's blocked. There's nothing.
Mm.
We had a, a student that fell down some stairs, external, outside stairs that they were made of like steel corrugated stairs that went down, levels of the resort and whatever. And they fell from top to bottom. Um, and this must have been my first. This was before I'd done my CP training, my first responder training. Um, I'd done lots of like first aid stuff before, and I'd dealt with that sort of stuff before, and like medically things in my previous jobs.
Yeah.
Um, but we rang an ambulance, and the call handler tried to explain what the issue was, and the call handler was like, "Oh, yeah, we'll pass it on to the Pompier, which are the fire service who run the evening ambulances." And they just turned around and said, "We're not going to be able to make it. We're not going to be able to get there."
Mm.
And this person's outside in the cold, got typical what you call C-spine injuries, so she's got a neck injury, um, and we were just like stuck, and so we had to eventually. Um, Maybe I had done my first responder training at that point. Can't remember, but you know, the idea was that obviously, like you train most of the time. If someone's got a neck injury, you don't move them. Even most people know that. But could have been we were waiting 4 hours, 4 hours for an ambulance to arrive in the minus 5, 6, 7, 8 degrees. It was a cold night. It was snow everywhere, and
Were you
so we
with
had to
me?
move them.
Were you with me that time in VT outside? Oh, I always get this one mixed up. What's the one with the hut, the club that was in the little hut?
Malaysia,
Malaysia, yeah, it was underground.
yeah,
That that girl slipped, and I swear she had sort of suspected spinal injury or
yeah, yeah,
something. And we didn't have any equipment at that time to move her or immobilize her because we never really did we? That was like where we sort of drew the line.
yeah,
But we called Pompier and they come. Well, they took so long. They were taking so long that then the danger became. She was getting so cold, lying on this. Were you there?
yeah. I was
That
there.
was
Yeah,
you.
yeah, yeah,
You were with me,
yeah.
yeah. And we were like, we're gonna have to move her because the greater danger to her now is exposure.
Is
Like
exposure.
yeah,
This was it. This was the problem we had with this other patient, client, student, was
mm,
that we were outside in the cold, and we ultimately ended up uh, breaking into a hotel lobby because a lot of the hotels don't have 24-hour receptions.
mm,
We broke into a hotel lobby, and we made a stretcher thing to carry this girl inside.
mm,
While somebody held her head still, because I say, like, if you're, yeah, okay, you might have, and ultimately, when I found out later on, she did have C-spine fracture, so she
mm,
had actually broken her neck falling down this
right,
stairwell, and but we had to move her because if we hadn't moved her, she would have died from the cold.
mm,
Um, so
yeah.
and
And if
again, that's not really something you get briefed on in in any job description, because it's not really that's not really why that's not what the job was sold to us for, but ultimately that's what
we
ended up
ended up
happening.
taking it on, didn't we? Because that's why it sort of escalated within my time there. There was that one particular incident which maybe we'll talk about that sparked me bringing my personal massive medkit out with me and
Yeah,
carrying it like everywhere because after a few occasions of being quite underprepared, not from our own choice, but like through the client maybe or through the company we worked for, and we just got a bit sick of. We were still sort of expected to deal with it. That's the thing. That girl lying there, and maybe the Pompier going, "Yeah, we're not going to come." Oh well, I don't know if I can personally, go, "Yeah, oh, okay, sorry, love, we're going to leave you here to die."
yeah.
I
Sorry,
can't
yeah.
do that.
No one's coming to help.
No one's come to help. So we're kind of put in this awkward position where it's like, well, I either walk away and let her die, or I start bringing out my own equipment at my own expense to be able to help these people because I can't really sit by and
Yeah,
see this happen.
it kind of became a bit of an expectation that we were, and eventually we got to a point where it was a case of, okay, well, we'll bring somebody out um,
Mm,
on the bigger events, the bigger weeks, to operate as a first responder, as a medic, and we
mm,
generally had those people dual rolled, so they were both security licensed and medically trained in some way, shape, or form. Um, but yeah, but again, like
But
we
it was
we weren't
the
there. That wasn't our tasking.
this is the thing, is the likelihood, the amount of spinal injuries that were confirmed as well that we dealt with
Yeah,
from people just slipping. They'd be
yeah.
walking, and yeah, they'd have a few drinks, but they weren't hammered. They would just be walking
No, no,
along,
no.
slip on some ice, done their back in. That's a high occurrence that would happen, a high chance. I'm sure you get spinal injuries every Saturday night in the UK on some city centre, but like not to the frequency that you would get from just sort of like tipsy people walking down the street. Because there's
Yeah,
ice
yeah.
everywhere basically, so that was the kind of thing where you go, right, these do happen enough to warrant actually us needing equipment
Yeah,
to,
yeah,
to
yeah,
deal
yeah.
with
Oh,
it,
yeah. I mean,
or something.
and I mean, all fairness to the Pompier out there, like they are predominantly firefighters. That's what their role is.
Mm,
But they had ambulances that could come, but those ambulances might cover, depending on what resort you're in, that they might be covering two or three resorts. Um, and on a daytime, everything's fine. So like we had there was instances where we would have to sort of like make a informed like choice to say to the person, look, you have really injured yourself. You've hurt, it's a shoulder injury or it's you've dislocated something or whatever. There's
mm.
an injury that you've sustained, but unfortunately, we're not going to be able to call an ambulance to you
Yeah.
because there is no ambulance available. Like they're not
Yeah,
they we've called them already,
they said they're
and
not coming.
they said they're not coming. They're busy.
Mm,
They'll get to us when they get to us. So we'll have to secure this injury until tomorrow morning,
mm,
when at like 8 a.m. in the morning, the resort medical centre opens and there's X-ray, there's doctors, there's nurses,
mm.
um,
And they couldn't
because the
comprehend it,
ambulance
could they?
service just
Because
would. No, no,
that
they just didn't
in the
get it.
UK, you could go out on a night out, smash your back in, slipping, doing something, and an ambulance will come and take you to a hospital. They were in shock, not medical shock, but like social shock at the situation of like, what? I have to lie in my bed all night with a suspected spinal injury and wait until the med centre opens in the morning. Like, yeah, you are really remote here. You It's lulled you into a false sense of security with all this nice stuff, but you're up a mountain in the middle of nowhere with very limited resources.
Yeah, yeah. And like, and again, we can't say, we haven't got. If the ambulance can't get up, we can't get down.
Yeah.
So we can't drive you to the local hospital in, you know, Moutier or wherever because
Mm,
that's the reason they're not coming up is the road is closed, the road is shut, it's full of snow, and they're
mm,
clearing it, and it is what it is. So yeah, you might have to wait for this stuff to arrive, and then you know the heartbreak was when an ambulance did turn up and it was a white one over a red one.
mm,
Um,
mm,
they you'd be sort of like, well, the red ambulances are technically free-ish because obviously the other thing is they're an emergency service, but it did cost everybody. There was a cost to going in an ambulance,
yeah.
um, and if if the pompier turned up, then yeah, it was not as expensive. It was a semi like free transfer to a hospital.
Mm,
But if a white one turned up and it was a SAMU, which is the doctors and nurses on the ambulances, there was a cost to that, and they would make sure you had your
mm.
insurance details or a way to pay for it before they would even take you.
Yeah, I remember times that they were sat there for ages not going, and all their mates are going, why are they not going, why are they not taking them? It's like they're sorting out the paperwork. They will not budge until they've got everything. So the mates would have to run back to the accommodation to pick up passports and paperwork and ID and all this kind of stuff, and
Yeah,
so
and a credit card to make sure they could pay for
credit
it.
card. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
they were really
Um,
like baffled a lot of these students a lot of the time. It was a real shock, wasn't it? The
yeah, yeah.
difference. Um,
Um,
I don't think they've been particularly well informed sometimes, but
no, no, and they say on a daytime that it's fine, like But again, if you fall on the ski slope,
oh,
during the
you're
day,
set, mate. Yeah.
well, you are from a perspective of infrastructure to come and get you.
Yeah.
But if a helicopter has to come out and pick you up, someone's got to pay for that. You know,
Oh yeah, but I mean the fact of like in the daytime, if you even in resort, but most likely it's going to happen on the piste somewhere. There's a whole, the PCAs and all that
network.
thing network ready to pick up like injured people, and they're on it straight away.
Yeah,
But at night time, yeah, if you and that's mostly I think with most of our passengers, the students would injure themselves would be at night on a night out, just being drunk and slip in or
yeah,
stupid or
yeah. Well,
whatever. And there's
I
nothing.
mean, um, nightclubs in the French Alps, very well to do sort of like resort, they all serve glass. They all serve in glass.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
the amount of uh, injuries from people standing on broken glass, people standing on the stems of broken wine glasses,
Mm,
all that kind of stuff. Like it just never really occurs to anybody that there's nobody around to treat those injuries at 2 o'clock in the morning.
mm. This is a crazy thing as well because like the health and safety that we have in the UK, you know, compared to France. It's funny actually because I was talking to Phil, our mate that we've spoken about previously. I spoke to him, a few months ago, and he's lived out in France for a bit, and he was talking about wanting to go back out there because he was saying, the cultural difference, like just not being the nanny state, you know,
Yeah, yeah,
there's not like over here you go to a swimming pool and it's like the floor might be wet is the example used, and you kind of go, yeah, no shit, the floor's going to be wet, but there is a sign in the UK telling you the floor's wet, be careful, do not slip, because they're covering their ass. you know
yeah, yeah.
the cultural difference in France is there wouldn't be a sign like that. And then also, which probably leads on quite nicely to that story that was the catalyst to our medical thing.
Oh, I've got confused on which story you're talking about.
There's
Yeah,
so many, but yeah,
yeah,
like that. The fact that out there, like you say, oh, they serve glass. They'll just be like, well, yeah, be careful, don't wear stupid shoes in the club, and be wary of where you tread. Whereas in the
yeah, yeah,
UK,
yeah.
it's the club and everyone else's responsibility. So that's something we constantly be coming up against. Is like the cultural difference, like us dealing with the Brits that were angry at us, really offended at us, really, you know, you 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 can't let this happen. Like, you're in France now, you're not in the UK. It's different
Yeah.
rules. There's different, this is not that club cannot. I'm like, in the UK they cannot serve glass, and you can sue them. But in France, they can serve glass, and there's nothing you can do about it. They just
Well,
couldn't comprehend they're in a different country.
mate, like I can speak very candidly on this in the context of the way security staff are in France.
Mm,
Um, the French security staff, I'd worked really closely with a lot of them, and there's some really, in France, security is a profession. You're paid
mm,
like a professional. People take it very seriously. They live their whole lives doing it. They make reasonable livings doing it. And I'm just talking about as nightclub doormen. If realistically,
mm,
um, they make a pretty reasonable living as a nightclub doorman. The
mm,
pay is pretty reasonable, and it's far better than over here. It's hard to get a license in France and hold a reasonably high standard. Um, and but the way they operate is not how we operate. And
no,
the English students, the English tourists,
they'd learn that the hard way.
people, they do learn that the hard way, and I learned it the hard way. I didn't know. I was, when I went out on my first year, I was, you know, uh, naive to it. I didn't I didn't get it. I just assumed that we do things our way and
Mm,
whatever. But the police don't operate over here. The police don't operate the same way the French police operate.
mm,
There's multiple different police forces, as it were. Most of my interactions were with you've got your uh, gendarmerie, which are your military police. You've got your police national, which are the national police. Um, you've got your police municipal, which are the local municipal police, as it were, like almost like employed by each individual. I suppose maybe council would be the best way to describe it over here. Um, and they all have different sets of rules, different sets of regulations, different things that things that they give a shit and don't give a shit about. And then on a night time, they'll disappear. There's nobody.
Yeah.
You know, how many times would you? But then they're all in their own uniforms. Like you go to Lazark, and then the police municipal dressed like SWAT team members. My police municipal in Val d'Isere, I don't even. I think they carried a torch.
Wait, do you remember
And
the Zark one, police municipal, with
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah,
revolver?
yeah, like an
The
old school
Dirty
revolver.
Harry 45
Yeah,
massive revolver. It's crazy. I swear those guys had the
um,
dog as well, didn't they?
they were the one. Yeah, they did. They had a
They
dog.
got
They had a police
yeah.
dog. Walked around, and then occasionally you'd walk out. Especially at the festival we did, you'd just come across these guys in greens, in like fatigues, and you're like, "What the fuck are these guys?" And then you find out, oh, they're the counter terror police, and they're here doing counter terrorism.
Yeah.
There is a agricultural police force in France that just literally do like agriculture and green issue policing. Um, but anyway, most of our interactions were either with the gendarmerie or the police municipal. And on a night time, after a certain time, let's say, generally after let's say 11 o'clock, you don't see those police officers anywhere. They're gone. They've gone to bed. Most of the gendarmerie are in ski resorts because they are on their rotation. They've been told they have to go there, and they don't really want to do any paperwork. They don't really want to do any work. They want to get up on the daytime, do their patrols, get some skiing in, get a suntan, and do as little work as possible. The police municipal, like depending on the resort you're in, are either really good or really not. I won't say anyone was really shit, but they were less willing to assist. Um, so like, and that was that's and the security staff, the way that they work is they in France. The only way I can really describe it is the French security staff have gained a lot of respect from their clients, from their customers. From if you're a nightclub doorman, you are fairly respected as a member of security staff. It's not the most easy job to get. It's not the. It's not the. But the culture is very different. There is a very much more respect given to security staff. You don't really. People do, but like it's not the norm to treat a member of security staff like shit.
Well, the difference I was going to say earlier as well, in it being a profession, but also you can't really be a security doorman in France unless you are. Over here we will have a fat doorman who's got a presence, but he's not exactly doing MMA every night. And it's not that he can't fight; he can handle himself. He's big. But in France, they tend to all be practicing pretty well skilled at like some martial art. They're all pretty young, fit, tall, like six. A lot of them are like,
Yeah,
and if they're not 6 foot, they're tough. They're really tough, aren't they? And that's
yeah.
expected.
This is it. Like, yeah, if you work in the security industry in France, you're expected to be working in the security industry in France. In the context of like most of the French security staff I worked with, I got my network with, they got their jobs on their reputation. They got their jobs on their ability to handle themselves. And a lot of them lived up to it. A lot of them were like, yeah,
Yeah.
I got this job because I can do this, that, and if fights happened, you know, they, they got stuck into it. They dealt with it. And the way that the French police are, you don't get this same sort of like, there's not from French security staff. There is not a concern that if a fight happens in their venue and they get involved, that they're going to be arrested.
No.
They're not going to be questioned by the police. they're not going to get charged with assault, because I know firsthand that I had that issue working on the venues. Was that we had altercations inside our venue. The police expected us to deal with it,
Mm.
because it was not their job to deal with it. It was not their problem. It was not their the exact phrase I got from a French police officer when I was interviewed over an incident that happened was, "This is your house. You defend it."
Well, yeah, that's it. You remember that time I turned up in Lazark and we got there late because the transfer was late. So we literally get off the coach and we've missed 2 hours. Our shift starts at 10, so we get there and start at 12. So this is the first night, and these students are running rampage in this accommodation, and it's a big week as well. So there's a lot of students there, and we're playing like catch up to try and get around this massive accommodation and quieten it all down. And the police had been called out by residents that were in the accommodation, and we crossed paths at some point, and he goes like, he was fuming, and he's like, "I'm not here to do your job. Why?" Oh no, he said, "Why am I out tonight doing your job for you?" And he didn't speak great English, so it took a while to explain, that we'd arrived late, and look, we'll get it sorted out. And eventually, we patched things up with him over the next few days, didn't we? But I think that was my first interaction where I was like, that is such a different exchange than you'd ever have with a British cops doing security. They do not want you to get involved, whereas the French police are like, "I don't want to be called out and have to do this."
That's what you're employed for. You're employed to do this,
Yeah.
and we had that sort of interaction. We had a really good relationship with a lot of the police forces in the Alps. We 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 nurtured those relationships over time, but they knew that these venues, these festivals, these student trips had security on them, and they expected those security to do their job. And only if there was something, if something that was criminal beyond what we were there to deal with was happening, should we tell them.
Yeah.
Um, you know, and I mean, even to the point of when there was criminality happening,
Good luck trying to
they
get
still
someone
wanted
out
to
of
know
it.
what they still wanted to know why we weren't dealing with it.
I
You
know.
know, one resort we worked in for quite a long time. It was a perplexing setup, but their police municipal, their nighttime, no, sorry, their local policing team
Mm.
had they have what's known as, I still don't even know what it stands for to this day, but they would have ASVP officers with them, which were not police officers. They were just like, uh,
It's like the
hmm,
community support,
yeah, they were kind of like,
their
yeah, like
equivalent.
like PCSOs almost.
Yeah.
And in one specific resort, those PCSOs were doormen. They were security staff. They were
Mm.
guys that I'd worked with, French guys that I worked with, and it was just a different relationship that they would have with security staff over there to what they have here. Is that the police respected the security staff well enough that they would put them on patrol with them.
Mm.
And can you imagine, in the UK, if suddenly you had like teams of like SIA licensed door staff wandering around the streets on a night time, dealing with police incidents?
Yeah, I mean the police over here, like they just look at us like scum, and it's like, yeah, maybe there's some good reason, for some people, but not all of them. It's like every interaction that I've had with the British police whilst doing, security jobs. It's not that they've been talking to me like shit, but there's something in the air where
Yeah,
they're
yeah,
like, they don't like you. And
yeah,
it's not that every French police liked us or like, but it's just a cultural, a different sort of. The police in France know they're the boss. It's not like they kind of super chummy with you, but it was more respect.
there was a lot of respect from the French police to the security staff. They're, like, and which is, in some respects is crazy because the the as we were saying before, the how you get a job in France, um, is on your ability to handle your business.
Mm,
People will get their jobs because they knew that their reputation had that they knew how to handle themselves in a fight, and
mm,
um, it was one of those things that you kind of. But then also when it came to the police, that they were like, "Well, this is your job. That's what you're here to do. If someone's kicking off in your nightclub, then get hands on and throw them out. Um,
yeah.
if
Well,
a fight, especially in the Alps, if a fight breaks outside your nightclub, there's no police to call. There's no one to turn up. There might
yeah.
be one guy sat, in the office taking phone calls down the mountain,
This
and
is
they
it. I
don't turn
mean,
up in any quick time.
it's. I'm sure it's different in say Paris, like the big cities,
Mm.
but I still should imagine there is still that cultural difference where you can be a lot rougher as a doorman in Paris, in France, than you can in the UK. But I think it's exacerbated on the ski resorts because you are in the middle of nowhere with far, far fewer resources. And often there would be like a one man door for like a pretty big club. And that is one guy who had to keep law and order in that club. And if he was seen to be soft in any way, and not just from our Brits, from the French and
French.
all the other nationalities, like he had to be seen as being a hard bastard and that he's got things in control. So that's why I think any time anything slipped out of line, boom, they want to put a show on, don't they, and let everyone know I'm in charge here.
Yeah.
So that
Well, let's. Oh, go on. I mean, let's face it. Like the cultural difference that we had all the time, um, from especially from the students, and I got it from a lot of tourists, whilst I was working out there, was that um, security staff can't and shouldn't operate this way to them as British people, because that's not what they're used to.
no,
But I know, that if most doormen in most French doormen, and I'll be honest, after 2 seasons of doing door work and venue cover, and I became a French doorman, but it was very much that they will ask you, they will tell you, they will make you. Um, having getting an open hand slap from a French doorman, because you haven't left the venue, um, when they've asked, so you've been kicked out the front door and you want to, you'll you get kicked out the front door and then you come back and you want to say your piece. That doorman will ask you to leave. He will then tell you to leave, and if you don't leave, he will slap you across the face. And that you get knocked to the ground, you wake up, you shake your head and go, "What the fuck just happened?" You walk over to the potentially, slim chance of the police officer down the road. You walk over to that gendarmerie guy and go, "That doorman just slapped me." That gendarmerie officer is going to turn and go, "What did you do
yeah,
to deserve getting slapped by the doorman?"
yeah, yeah,
Um,
that's it.
they do
You
not put it down as an assault. They do not file a report. They just go, "Well, it's his house. You probably did something to deserve it."
well, this is the thing is like the amount of times we had to, that was part of our job is to be the cultural go between, wasn't it? Customer service and all that thing. So the amount of times we had a customer come up to us, a Brit, outraged that they had been, slapped, assaulted, roughed around by one of these doormen, French doormen, and and they're drunk, so you're trying to explain to them why it's happened, and not that you necessarily agree with it, but there's nothing you can really do about it, and they just won't take it. They're all like worked up and, oh well, I'm going to go to the police tomorrow and this kind of thing, and then sometimes they do go to the police tomorrow and get nowhere, and then they would maybe come back to you a few nights later and go, sorry mate, sorry I was being a bit dick to you the other night, because they realise they're getting nowhere. But
Yeah,
this is the thing, is like the excuse, or the reason why I would say that it is justified, you know, to some extent, or more justified, is because this the doorman is on their own in a really dangerous environment, like up a mountain with no backup or no support. So that's what I was saying, they had to like assert that kind of dominance, didn't they? Because if they were seen as being weak, then this is the thing, is like the most the Brits would sort of do to them is be mouthy, annoying, you know. But some of the other nationalities that would go out there, their culture is different. Like, they would actually be quite violent towards those doormen.
yeah, yeah. I mean,
Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, yeah. I mean, in a ski resort, obviously you have, you know, the sort of setup is that on a Saturday people arrive, and then by next Saturday they disappear. One week it'll be Scandinavian week, so you'll have all the Swedes out, all the Danes out. The next week, you know, by Saturday they've all packed up and gone home because their holiday's over. Then that week, the week after is like a British week, so you get loads of Brits out. You know, you'd get the Parisian holiday, you get the Marseille holiday, you'd have the Russians come out and have their holiday out there.
yeah,
You know, so it was a constant like cycle of different people all the time in these resorts, because ultimately it's a holiday resort. You know, like it'd be like a holiday resort in the sun. You know, half terms and holidays don't necessarily line up, so you get varying different people, and that's what I learned really quickly was, oh, apart from the people who live in the ski resort, like the other people who work here, the other people that work in all the other bars, the hotels, the restaurants, the ski hire guys, all that kind of stuff, everybody else, every tourist is different every week. And so one week in our really nice club, you know, in Val d'Isere, we'd have, you know, Russians turning up and they'd be dropping 40,000 euros on bottles, and they would, you know, they'd tip really well, and it'd be really like party, and it was like, oh, this is a good week. The week after that would happen to be like half term or something, or what we started to call a cheap week, where all the chalets they'd had their 10,000 euros a night clients in. The week after that, they were selling that same chalet to stag do's from the UK for 1,000 for the
nothing.
week,
Yeah,
and you know that they would then turn up and want everything dirt cheap, and you know, act like normal Brits and wreck the place, and you know, so. But the thing with I think with the difference in culture between the French and the English was very like noticeable to me when I started working out there. Was when generally when a French person walks up to the club, a nightclub door, they look at the door staff, the bouncer, the security staff, and they ask, whether they verbally ask or whether they just gesture, they ask for permission to enter the building. You
yeah,
know, they wait for the door staff to say, yeah, go inside, you're allowed to go inside, we've allowed you in. The difference between the Brits was it was almost like an inherent right that they were allowed in. And on numerous occasions, you'd see like these guys walk up from the UK, they'd try and breeze past the door staff, and the French door staff would stop them, hold them, pull them back, and go, no, 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 wait there. And they couldn't understand why, because there is very, you know, in a lot of senses, there's quite a lot of disrespect to door staff in the UK. It's just
yeah.
like, you know, you're on a pretty garbage wage, and generally you're doing your night shift, you're doing your door shift, and everyone's there. Their inherent right is to go inside that building,
Well,
and the
a
French didn't
customer
have that.
will beg to get, you know, the door staff in the UK to get in, but once they're in, they're like, piece of shit. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Because they know that doorman has the ability to refuse them, so they're all sheepish. Oh, hello, thank you, you know. And then once they get in, they fucking hate them, you know. Whereas that's like you were saying, the way the French behave towards the doorman is like, oh, this is your house. I'm kind of asking to come in, and I know that you control this, and that you're going to probably defend it quite well.
yeah.
You know, if needs be.
The,
So
the,
they're a bit more tentative around it, aren't they?
the sort of when it came to that the conflict with the French was that there's two types of French person, French customer.
Mm.
Um, they you have your sort of when they were refused or when they were thrown out of a venue. Generally, you could pretty much work out that they would walk away and go somewhere else and not bother you at all,
Mm.
or it would escalate into out and out violence
Mm.
because they there was a small amount of talking from the French. They would ask the question of why they'd been thrown out. They'd plead their case a bit, and they would get a no. And when they got the no, they understood that it was either go away and they would go away,
Mm.
or they then wanted to fight. They were like, no, you this is a respect thing now, and they wanted to save their ego, and
Mm.
it would turn it would turn quite quickly. The difference between the English is it doesn't always turn quickly because they want answers, and what they don't understand is the
Yeah.
answer is I'm telling you no, and this is our house.
Mm.
We make the rules. You've brought the rules. You go away. The Brits would tend to plead and negotiate and
For 45
apologise
minutes.
and for
Yeah.
45 minutes. And then they would work out whether they were going to walk away or they were going to be aggressive towards you.
Mm.
Um, and a lot of the time it was bravado and like, blah, 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 blah. Sometimes it wasn't, we did get into incidences, but a lot of the time it was bravado. It was, the shouting, the screaming, putting a show on.
Mm.
Generally, the French didn't necessarily put a show on. It was a case of they were going to accept the loss and walk away because they knew what the door staff were capable of.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and if they were prepared for that level of violence, they would then go, okay, I'm prepared for this level of violence. I'm going to fight this guy. I'm going to fight these people.
Mm.
Whereas the Brits, I don't think were prepared for the level of violence that was coming their way.
No, that was it. And I think there was crossed wires, wasn't there? Because where the Brits would come a cropper with it all is because Phil did the door out in ski resorts for many
Phil's
years.
Phil, Phil's Phil's one of the alumni.
The alumni,
There's
yeah, yeah,
there's
yeah, that we're
only
still in
there's
contact with, and
there's
you know,
there's only there's only so many people. I can probably count the amount of people on my hands that are in that club of British door staff that went out to France and got their licenses to work on doors and actually did that job.
which is worth saying. I never did the door in France, but I know a lot of these things through just observation. So I was there for the resort support, and we were sat in that van, and we'd see all of these things going on. So I know the interactions and the culture and all of this stuff. Although I never did the door myself, I will say that. But from talking to Phil, he goes, the French would test you because I think they're trying to suss you out. Like the French will be a lot more like pushy, and I did witness that because there's times where I would have to deal with, some pissed French dickhead. He comes up to you and he's just like, doesn't get that I'm resort support security there to deal with the British students, and I'm not going to bother him. Nothing to do with him, but because he sees me dressed like security, he's like testing me, you know. And they're a lot more like cocky about it. The French, like they'll test and they'll push and they'll push, and I think that's why the French doorman will do just a slap to just sort of like alpha, quick, get it sorted and done and dusted, and assert the dominance, and then it's almost as if that French guy, when he gets that slap, he goes, "Okay, cool, I'm cool. I know where I stand now." Whereas
Yeah, yeah.
then when the Brits receive that slap, or we're not talking like banged, getting knocked out on something really heinous here.
It's
We're just
generally
talking
an
about
open hand slap.
open hand slap or some kind of physical, interaction. Well, there's shock and you can't do that to me, and it's like that's where they would come undone, because it was like, yeah, you're stirring a hornet's nest here. That doorman here, there's not the consequences for him like there are the doorman in the UK. So you can push
Yeah,
your luck all you like in the UK with a doorman, and I'm sure people do get banged out by doormen in the UK if they're and they get away with it if they're very careful about where the CCTV is or the evidence or whatever, But generally, it's harder for a doorman in the UK to physically slap someone without, just for being annoying and get away with
Yeah, I
it.
mean that's it. As obviously like they say the argument in the UK is that you can only really act in self defense, and that's all well and good, and you
Mm,
know having somebody be a dickhead to you is not really self defense.
justification, yeah.
Justification for acting in self defense. But in France, if you're a dickhead to a doorman, member of security staff,
Mm,
they will slap you. They will slap you, and they will make sure that you know that you are being a dickhead, and
yeah.
they don't really worry about the same consequences as we would in the UK. And I think that's where a lot of them came unstuck, was that they were holding the French, whether it was the country, the resort, the security staff, everybody to the same standard as in the UK. And not that the
Mm,
French standard was any worse than the UK. It was more that the rule set was different. And the rule set in France was that if a doorman asks you to leave, um, we suggest you leave,
mm,
because they are not going to tolerate the back and forth. They you know I mean by law in the UK, you don't have to give a person a reason why they've been thrown out. You don't have to give a reason why you're refusing entry.
mm,
Like, but our customer service steps in and goes, "No, we're not going to let you in because of X, Y, and Z. We've thrown you out because of X, Y, and Z." Um, and you sort of get into that conversation of, "Look, this is what it is." Da 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 da. But in France, if they throw you out of the nightclub, they are not going to stand for 10 minutes and tell you why.
no.
They're just not. It's just and having to like convey that over to British students and British tourists was very difficult, because they would want to go back and have their say. They'd like to go and plead their case. They'd like to get an explanation. They want an apology.
Yeah, oh my good God. You're not getting an apology. Lucky if you escape without the slap. This is the thing. It's like the difference is, say you go up to a club in the UK and you get refused entry for some reason. Well, most of the time the person's going to stand outside for 45 minutes and try and get in. Or if you're in the club and you do something, whether you did it or you didn't do it, for whatever reason you get ejected. So you're getting kicked out and you're going to be sort of restrained by the British security and sort of shoved out the door, and that's it. The difference would be in those two scenarios in France is you'd get a slap to go along with it, isn't it? And that's the point. That's the thing. The point of contention with the Brits is they were like they could handle getting physically removed from a venue, and they could handle getting refused entry as long as they can stand outside for 45 minutes and complain about it. That's what the French wouldn't have. So to stop that 45-minute bitching, they would get slapped. Then that's when the Brit pops off. Or if they're getting ejected, they get quite forcefully ejected with a slap. The reason the slap happens in France, like we say, is because they are on their own up a mountain with no resources. They're sort of asserting dominance to get known as being a sort of not to be messed with, I guess, isn't it? Essentially.
Yeah, and I mean, it's one of those things of like, we had instances where especially in the result on the result support side of stuff, we had instances where we realised we were on our own. On the
Mm.
venue, I had very, I had
Yeah,
very, very real experiences of being on our own.
mm.
Our resort had two nightclubs, 5 or 6 popular bars, and two nightclubs. Um, we had constant contact with the guys at the other nightclubs, the bars, etc. We had a 5 to 6 man team, and generally, if you were kicked out of one nightclub, they would tell us that they've kicked somebody out of the other nightclub. We keep an eye out for them, make sure they refuse entry at our door, vice versa.
Mm.
Um, so, and then again, no police. You'd see one police patrol that had come around maybe 10, 11 o'clock at night, the gendarmerie. They'd go down the mountain, they'd go to the other resort, do their thing, and then they go to bed because they don't really want to be there. They're the military police. They're not really there to
Deal with drunken
trouble
pissants,
themselves with nighttime antics. The police municipal, they had an opening time 8 till 8. After 8 o'clock, rarely ever saw them in 6 years, maybe let's say in 3 seasons of being there on a venue. Did occasionally come round, but they weren't. There was no 999 to call for them to turn up. So if you kick somebody out of your venue, and then they couldn't get into the other venue, if they were that way inclined, that sort of person, they would come back and they would want to argue their case. They would want to be aggressive. They would want to fight with you. And you were like, oh, there's nobody here to help. There's nobody to call to disperse them. There's no police officer to come and scoop them up on a dispersal order and put them in a cell for the night and blah, 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 blah.
Well,
there was no ramifications.
That's the thing I think that Phil was trying to say to me with the French testing you, is it's almost like when the French guy comes back, and he'll do the same, like the Brit gets refused entry or kicked out. The Brit will come back to the front door and go, argue for 45 minutes. The reason the Brit argues for 45 minutes is because they're not getting slapped and they know that they can just be annoying and there's going to be no consequences. Phil almost said to me about the French, when they come back, they'll do the same thing, but they're almost wanting their slap. I'm not leaving until I get my slap to tell me.
Yeah. That's it. That's it. Yeah.
And then once the French guy gets slapped, he's like, okay, thank you very much. It's almost like he was like, I'll be offended if you do not slap me, if I'm not worthy enough to be.
I haven't tried hard enough if I've not been slapped.
Yeah, that's it. That's what Phil was sort of saying. And he's like, I think he was talking about when he very first started doing it. And then he clocked on to that. And he was like, I have to assert, they're expecting dominance from me. And once I assert that, they almost respect me then.
Well, this was it. I had to, when I first started, I had to sort of, even just from the perspective, I mean, I remember very vividly getting laughed at by a customer because I was trying to eject him from the venue. And the problem was I didn't speak French. This French is okay. It is okay now. But when I first went out there, I speak what I call nightclub French. And it's enough to do the job that I needed to do, but it's certainly not going to get me any points at a dinner party.
No.
But I remember the first time I tried to eject somebody in French, the guy laughed at me. He laughed in my face, and
so
I'm
polite.
like,
it was like
and
school French.
This is it. I'd done like a year of French in school, so I tried to utilize that to speak to this guy in French. And he laughed at me. He laughed in my face, and I was like, "What the fuck is happening?" And the guy wasn't he wasn't a big aggressive guy or anything. He was just an idiot that we were chucking out. Yeah. And he laughed at me, and I was like, "I don't get it." So I eventually got him outside, and I spoke to a French colleague, and I said, "What? I don't get it. Why is he laughing at me?" And the guy said to me, "He says because you're being too polite." I said, "What do you mean I'm being too polite?" I said, "I'm just speaking how I think I'm supposed." And he says, "No. There's." If you are too polite to them, they do not respect you. They don't respect the. So hence why my French is very sort of ghetto, because I learnt from French door staff.
The equivalent would be you were probably speaking very formal in English. You'd be like, "Excuse me, old boy. Well, I'd like you to leave this venue right now." When really you should have been speaking to him in roadman. That's imagine going up to London and being like. You got to be like, listen, bruv, get the fuck out. Whereas
that's it. Well, this is it, and
come on now, old chap.
I said, excuse me, sir. Please, can you make your way outside?
Exactly.
And I'm getting looked at and basically getting told to fuck off in French. And I remember him shouting insults at me and laughing at me, and I didn't know what the insults were. Yeah. And he just thought it was hilarious that I was trying to kick because their expectation of how they're going to get kicked out is aggressive, and I wasn't being aggressive enough, and I was getting laughed at, and so my French now, realistically, is the French equivalent of roadman French, because I learnt from French doormen. That's just how I learnt French.
If you go to like you said, that dinner party,
that's it.
This guy's harsh.
Well, mate, I've sat in meetings with police officers and mayors of
Mm,
cities doing, mayors of resorts for these
yeah.
events that we did out there. And the only French I had was my roadman ghetto French, and it baffled these people of like, why is this stupid white English guy,
Yeah.
speaking like like essentially like roadman French?
Yeah. How did you know
Um,
this? Yeah. So good.
so, um, but it's one of those things that I learned that say they the way that they do things is very different to we're all about customer service. Don't get me wrong, you have to still be assertive in the UK and stuff, but there's not necessarily that concern from the French door staff that they're doing something wrong by physically putting hands on somebody, physically removing somebody. If a fight happens, they don't worry about losing their licenses because the French police, in my experience, because I experienced it very personally,
Mm.
was they the expectation was that the door staff handle that situation.
Yeah. 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 Definitely. And this is almost like a PSA for any students that are going to be going out to a ski resort or anyone who's listening to this. It's like change your expectations, isn't it? Change your
Yeah,
outlook on it because you'll do fine out there. You'll be fine. It, and that's the thing. I guess that's the thing that happens with Brits. We're renowned for it. We go around the world, basically expecting everything to be the way that we want it, and it's like, well, you wouldn't. You go to another country to experience its culture, is what it's supposed to be, and I think we get even more complacent with France because it is so close, and we sort of think it's so similar. I think if you went to somewhere that's very culturally different, like you went to India, visually and everything looks that you'd be expecting a lot of difference, but because everything looks very sort of like similar in France, I think their guard would be let down a little bit, wouldn't it? They were kind of expecting the laws to be all the same, and it's
that's
not.
it.
I think
Well, I mean, oh, go on.
yeah, no, there's something I think a lot actually is like we America because we speak the same language, we feel like, and we've grown up watching a lot of their media, like their films and stuff, been exposed to it. But if they spoke a different language from us, we would look at them as being so alien. But because the language is the same, we feel like, you know, culturally we're similar. And they're so different. And I think that's the same thing with France. Like, obviously, the language is different, but we get complacent because they're so close. They're our neighbour, and there's a lot of history between us. And people sort of think like, oh, the history between France and England, and all this kind of thing. And it's like, no, they're France is very, very, very different place, really.
Yeah, well, I say, I mean, culturally they're very different. They have a very different ethic to, ethos to us, and
Mm,
the way that the way they worked, the way their security worked was very different. You know, I mean, I can probably tell a pretty reasonable tale of how different things were for me when I
mm,
got there. Obviously, went and got this job, rocked up to an airport, got on a flight, got on a minibus. Didn't really know what I was getting myself into, but again, I probably went in with a very similar attitude of, well, it can't be that different, da 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 da. And I spoke to the colleague that I went on the flight with, and we sort of had a very similar understanding of what we were not getting ourselves in for, but what our personal expectations were,
mm,
gauging from the UK. So and this gives a really good insight into how different the security staff are in the UK to the French.
mm,
Um, so we arrive in this really nice resort, snow everywhere, it looks really beautiful, picturesque, blah blah blah. Go to our venue, um, orientate ourselves with the venue a little bit, and we've got a couple of days before we actually open, and we're getting all the stuff ready, and we get given our uniforms, and we're sort of like, oh, this is really cool. We've got really nice Gucci North Face jackets, and we looked the shit. We were like We've got a solid team. Introduced to the other three English, two English. I we hadn't met our French counterpart yet because we generally had a French guy work with us on the door. And we sit down, start going through, you know, the guy in charge had done loads of work, got loads of risk assessments in place, done all these, he'd done things properly. He was, he did pride himself on that, and his paperwork was always pretty solid, and so we started going through all this stuff, and he'd done maps of the venue and ejection plans, etc. And we go through and we sort of sit down at this table, and I remember sitting down at this table, and he sort of dished out some bits and pieces to each person, and then he goes, okay, guys, this is it, giving you introduction, your briefing, and he goes under the table and he pulls out this box, and he opens the box, and inside the box he hands out. He reaches in the box and he gives each person at the table a couple of things. He puts them on their piles of uniform and goes, "They're for you. They're yours." And I looked down at it, and the other guy I was with, who'd come from the UK, looked down at it as well and was like, "Shit." And what he'd given us was a baton, an expandable baton, and a kind of CS gas, like pepper spray CS gas each. And he just went, "They're yours." And I looked down and went, "Oh shit!
Yeah.
This is not what I was expecting for this job."
No.
And as I quickly learned and went over time, that most, if not all, French security staff have CS gas, expandable batons, and it transpires that this is normal behaviour for the French because it's normal behaviour for French people. You can go over to a shop and you can buy almost anything that you like in regards to a baton, a CS gas, knuckle dusters, flick knives in souvenir shops. And so therefore, it's so readily available to French people, and you're allowed to defend yourself in France. There's a law of self-defense, and if you use those items in self-defense, there is no problem with it. And therefore, the French door staff are allowed to use them. And so, and us as French door staff were allowed to and were given these items to use. And it blew my mind. And I was like, oh, this was never spoken about before we got here. It was never spoken about, in the interview. None of this stuff was spoken about.
He goes like, you're like, "Oh, do you think I'll need it?" It's like, "Oh, you'll need it."
Well, exactly, and I'll be honest, that equipment, that those pieces of equipment, those, what would be deemed completely illegal in the UK, saved my life and I'm not exaggerating, saved my life on more than one occasion.
Yeah, because that's the thing as well, is like up there. Again, I haven't done the door in the UK, and I haven't done the door in some sketchy parts of the UK, and I'm sure lots of horrible things happen, but I don't know, man. I just think like things go down out there hard. You know what I mean? They go down, don't they? Like harder than a normal nightclub in the UK. Do you know what I mean?
Generally, yeah.
Not every night, not all the time, but when they do, they do. And so yes, that's it. It's not an exaggeration, like you say, that's like life-saving equipment.
Yeah. And it became the norm. It was normal for other door staff to have them. When we've done the events, when we've done the festivals, the door staff that work in the venues in those resorts. It's part of their like normal day-to-day life.
Well, and that's another area of which it became a problem with the British customers that we're looking after, is that they then don't. I don't think I ever dealt with a customer that had a baton used on them, but I dealt with plenty of customers that had the CS gas used on them.
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. I mean,
And
and it became normal practice for us to carry the decontaminant spray
mm,
because if someone got sprayed by it, I mean, to be fair, the best decontaminant for CS gas is Coca Cola. You pour Coca Cola over it, it dissolves it. If you really didn't like the person, you would tell them to use the snow to wash it off, which made it worse. But and ultimately, like as from a legal perspective, on the door, like the French police would much rather French door staff spray somebody with CS gas,
yeah,
to de-escalate a situation,
mm,
because that is far safer and far less violent than getting into a fight or punching the person in the face and having them permanently injured, or some incident happen where they hit their head on the floor. If you spray with CS gas, most people go away.
oh yeah. I mean, like there's the I'm sure we can mention him, the guy who's notorious for using it. In do you want to mention him in?
In Avoriaz?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, we can. Yeah, I'm sure we can.
yeah.
Yeah, a gentleman called David.
He was like
Uh,
the king of the CS because he had the
yeah,
massive
yeah. You
like
carry bear spray style, like
bears.
dog the
Yeah,
bounty,
like that's it,
dog the
man.
bounty hunter, like fire
So
fire extinguisher looking shit.
so for people listening to this, most of them aren't going to know that it's like a fire extinguisher. It's got like this big trigger like handle on it, and it's got a can on it that's like a tin of beans sort of size, isn't it?
Yeah,
Um, or like a big deodorant can, and you get different types where there's some that are just a mist, mist sort of gas, but then there's other types that are like a gel, so it shoots like a super soaker, like really far, quite accurate. And I've seen him use that like multiple times on this venue, and he would use it because again he was on his own. He was a big guy, but maybe there was like him on the door, and then the other member of staff was like in the club,
inside.
inside. That's it. But this club was like again down in a sort of like basement, so there's no way he's like getting swift, assistance or calling this guy in any way, shape, or form. And then again, there's just two of them. And the times that I saw him use it was when there was multiple people brawling, outside, and he had to sort of defend his turf. But he'd spray it, and then I almost got hit by it once, so close. Luckily, I just turned my head, But he's sort of spraying it around, and it would just go everywhere, and it would hit some of our customers, the students, and then it would hit the reps, wouldn't it, as well? Like, it was a couple of times the reps
Yeah,
got
yeah,
hit by it, and we'd have to help them out and stuff. But numerous occasions where the Brits are just like shocked and outraged that they've been gassed and they can't comprehend it, and then they're coming back like complaining to us or complaining to the, they'll go to the police the next day and complain and get nowhere, and they'll come back, the next 3 nights in a row just like wanting to get revenge, and then eventually they'll give up because they realise they're not getting anywhere.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah, that's it. It's just another cultural shock, isn't it? That you wouldn't expect to go out. You would not go out on a night out in the UK and get sprayed by the door staff.
No, no.
Police maybe, but
But yeah, even that would be a last. No, it's not a common occurrence for people, and they say like it was one of those things that you know it happened so often that I got quite used to the effects of it in the context. Yeah, yeah, the taste of it.
Mm.
Um,
Wasn't you saying there was that one time where it got into the air conditioning or something?
oh, mate, yeah. Let me just take a short interval, 1 second, and then
Okay.
I will go into it.
Yeah, no worries. Cool. See you in a bit.
I'm back.
Oh, you're back already.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was just another technical glitch, but we'll manage.
Oh,
Um,
you've kept your main camera
so
recording, right? The
yeah, 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 yeah.
obviously,
Everything's
yeah,
going. It was
no
just
breaks.
just a webcam.
Just a bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sweet. Cool. Go for it. We're back.
So yeah, we had an incident where a venue next door to our venue had a single man doorman on it, and we were really good friends with him. You know, we looked after him, he looked after us, um, and he had at one point, like Elias explained previously, there's a couple of different types of this CS gas stuff. One of it is like an aerosol sprays like gas, like an aerosol would. Um, there was like a liquid type version, which was like the super, like the super soaker type stuff. It came out like a jet, and it was quite, quite accurate. You could kind of like pinpoint. And then there was like a gel, like it looked a bit like shaving foam that kind of was not quite fully foamed up. Um, but the guy next door to us had the aerosol version. I don't know if he knew he had it or it's just what he had. And he had an incident outside his door, and his his venue connected to our venue, and it just so happened that the intake for our air conditioning was next to our front door.
To his front door.
To both of the front doors lined up next to each other, buildings next
Right.
to each other. Our front door was here, his front door was there,
Yeah.
and the intake to our air conditioning was above our door. And he sprayed this aerosol CS gas at, for whoever he was having the incident with, and our air conditioning sucked it into the venue.
Oh, that was it. Yeah.
And he, I'm inside. I'm not on the door at the time. It's myself and my colleague John inside, and
Yeah.
we didn't have a full. It was quite early on for us, to be fair. We were a late night venue, so we'd opened up and we had like half of the club open, almost like the lounge bar area open.
Yeah.
Maybe like a few hundred people inside, and everyone's sitting down. Expensive drinks, expensive bottles, expensive tables, and I'm stood at one end, he stood at the other end, and we just clock eyes over the venue, and I get this distinctive taste on my lips, and I lock eyes with him, and he's doing the same thing, and I'm going, and I said to him on the radio, I was like, "Can you taste that?" And he's like, "Yeah."
Yeah.
And what it was is you could feel the CS gas on your lips and like in your mouth, and we got used to what it tasted like, so we kind of went, that tastes like CS gas. And within 2 minutes of us like having this almost like non-verbal conversation across the venue, everybody inside the venue started to cough and splutter and like gag and start to like, their eyes were burning, and we were like, shit. And people were like starting to like scream and shout, and we had to evacuate our whole venue. And we 500 people, or maybe 400 people dispersed out of this venue, because the doorman next door had ended up spraying his CS gas into our air conditioning, and it pumped it straight into the venue.
Must have diffused it nicely, like amongst everyone.
Honestly, mate, it looked like something out of a zombie movie. The way people sort of like suddenly just like started to like retch, and like we were like, oh shit. And yeah, so we had to disperse everybody out of this venue because the CS gas had come into the air conditioning, and fire exits all open. All these tables got abandoned, and because the guy next door had sprayed aerosol style CS gas into the air rather than a gel or a liquid or whatever it'd be.
Well, because the other one is the pepper spray, but then they do the mix, don't they, with pepper and CS? So it's like a double whammy of like the worst.
Yeah.
Because I think, what was it like, the pepper? I think I didn't get hit. This is the thing, I've experienced it, but through the TA, because I did the chemical trait testing. You fit in your mask and doing all that kind of thing, and they use the pellets where they fill this room with like the CS gas, And so I know what the CS gas is like, and it's like you said, it's got this distinctive taste or like sensation like on your lips and dries you out, doesn't it? And that's basically what it's doing. So your skin's like burning and stuff. Um, but yeah, the pepper's just like it just burns, doesn't it? Because I think I got it on me. I got it on me once on my hand or something, and it was just like my hand was like burning for the next like week or something. And no matter how much you washed, it sort of like gets
Gets into
into
your
your
pores.
skin. Yeah.
Well, I had a real my first interaction with CS gas gets into your pores as well, which I found out to my detriment. Was I got hit by we had an incident and I got hit by it quite full on, to be fair, by my colleague who thought it was hilarious.
Mm.
Um, and anyway, I got hit by the CS gas and I managed to like use Coca Cola to try and wash it off and all this stuff and whatever. And I got through, but it ruined I had contact lenses at the time before I had laser eye surgery, and
Right.
it ruined my contact lenses. So I had to take the contact lenses out and finish the shift basically blind.
Mm.
Um, and then I threw the contact lenses away and I went back, showered, did all my and the next day I went up to the gym, and the gym where I was working, about 90% of the customers that use that gym were all the door staff the from the resort, like from
Right.
all the French guys and stuff. So it was quite a good, like, sociable gym because we all knew each other. And I can get onto that later on because that's a really like key part of why I sort of like enjoyed my time out there so much.
Mm.
But I went to the gym the next day and I was, in the weight room and whatever, doing my thing, and I was sweating. And out of nowhere, I ended up getting this. But basically, what happened was I'd sweated out
Mm.
the CS gas from my pores
Oh
and it had
yeah.
run into my eyes. I was in the middle of this gym with all these other door staff who knew exactly what was wrong. All these French like killers,
Yeah.
um, and my eyes started burning, and I was like, "Oh shit!" And I could not see. I couldn't
Mm.
find a bathroom. They were all laughing. It was all hilarious because they knew why I was doing what I was doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
didn't speak any French. It was my first year. I didn't speak barely any French.
But they'd all been there
Um,
before. They'd be like, "Yeah, we've had that gym sesh where you've
yeah, 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 yeah.
sweated last night."
CS gas out your pores. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I had to try and find a bathroom and clean my eyes out. And I know that water's the worst thing, but I had nothing else.
Mm.
Um, yeah, so yeah, it does stick in your pores.
Yeah. That's it. That's it. Like, there's a. I never got a full on face of it out there or hit. I got hit by it that time. I think David's
Yeah.
thing, but luckily it didn't. He was using the gel, so it didn't like disperse. Like it hit like my hat that I had on, so it just stuck to the hat, and then that was all right. But yeah, I think I there was a couple of occasions where it had been like deployed over there or something, and I kind of smelt it, but I never really taken like a. Luckily, sweat it out of the gym the next day kind of amount. But
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Um, but yeah, it was one of those things and that's why ultimately, like that's why doing the door workout in the French Alps or France in general is
mm,
very, very different to doing it over here. It's just
yeah,
not something you are aware of, prepared for, know about, and that's English customers. I mean, on the continent, it's fairly a little bit more known, but over here, it's not something we have to deal with. And
and this is the thing, man. It's like I often think about like I think I was a good resort support guy, and I think that when the shit hit the fan and things went down, I didn't back down, and I was there, and I did what needed to be done. But I would say like I don't think I was cut out for. I never did the door out there. I don't think I was really cut. I wasn't cut out for doing the door out there. That
um,
I mean,
well,
absolute emergency push, I probably could have done it, but I don't think that I would be, good for doing the door at one of these venues.
I for me, like it was a learning curve, an experience, something I had to learn to do.
Mm,
Um, if I mean, I'll be honest, like it probably changed me very much as a person.
mm,
Um, like when I did my interview, um, when I did my like initial sort of like I'm going to go do this job. Um, I was a very different person on my first year going out. And if you ask the guys that interviewed me, the people that knew me, the people that like when I came back from doing it, I was a very different person. It changed me as a human, I think,
mm,
because I saw a level of violence and conflict that I'd never seen exist over here.
mm,
Um, and I saw a lack of support from anybody in the context of like there was no resources to help us. So when I went out there, I was quite a naive person. Not naive in like I say, I've always been happy to do the job and whatever. But if you speak to the people that met me on my before I went out, um, in the context of like the guys I worked with to start with, because I was the typical English doorman. I was the
mm,
English like customers. I'd done all the festivals. I'd managed teams on festivals. I'd run festival teams, and my forte was doing events and festivals. I was not like the die-hard like killer doorman.
no.
I'd done door work, but I also had the ethos and the ethic of like how we would do events, doors, and festivals over here. You
Mm,
know, predominantly customer service. Try and help. Before you kick somebody out, you've got the welfare checks. Can they get home? Have they got their money? Da da da. Um, and um, I'd not really had that level of like uh, chaos. We'd had a lot of chaos in some of the events, but like I I noticed, and the people I worked with and the people I lived with, we all noticed the change in us when we were out there. Like it
mm,
changed. If you'd have met me 12 months before me going out on that first job, that
mm,
first um, contract with the venue, I was a very very different person to what I was 6 months into it.
mm.
Um,
Yeah, I mean, I can see that because even the time that I spent out there doing, the things I did out there, it's shaped me, it's changed me. We've spoken before about how the way I was before I started doing this work to the way I am now, my outlook on life, my outlook on the way the world is, and all of these kind of things is very different from the way it was, before I jumped in at the deep end, Um, but I think, yeah, that's what I'm saying is it's like the door work though out there is like even more. You know what I mean? We were like the resort support work, although it had its moments. Generally, you're sort of like safer.
yeah, yeah. The resort support aspect of things was very much like French security light, diet French security.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
Um,
yeah.
Working on the door was you know was a different animal, and
Mm,
it was a different animal to anything I'd done over here. And from me, and from a perspective of that, like I for a long time refused to do door work in the UK. I wouldn't do it. I still rarely do it to this day,
mm.
unless it's a benefit to my company. Um, I won't do nightclub door work over here because it's just not the same thing.
No, I mean, well, I've only done one door shift really, other than that one that we had.
Yeah,
The like because it's through the company, but I think that's what because I'd basically gone from doing the CP course to pretty soon being out doing this resort support thing and doing all this crazy
yeah.
stuff, and then that, like I said, that changed me to the point where of like I don't think I could do the door in the UK, having seen what I've seen. I don't think I could. I don't
The
know. It would piss me off.
I got to like I say, if you speak to the guy, the guys that interviewed me, and Grant and those people, the person I was in that interview was not the same person that I was
Mm,
after 6 months of being out there. it it made me a different person mentally.
Mm.
Um, it made me a different person physically. Like, I suppose I can and can't say this, but weirdly enough, one of the things that uh, I found out after I got the job was um, I'd done my years in the UK doing the event scene, the festival scene, the circuit. Da, da, da. I went to do this interview, and I did a really good job in the interview, and
Mm.
got the job and everything. But it was actually weirdly that the guy who ran the venue wanted to veto my application form for the venue.
Oh,
This
you did.
is this is
Yeah.
quite quite embarrassing, but
Mm.
he wanted to veto my application form, my application to the job because
Mm.
um, I didn't physically meet the requirements he was expecting,
Mm.
which basically, in a nice way, is saying that I was overweight. I looked fat,
Mm.
um, and like, yeah, fair. I mean, and fair play to Ant. He understood the festival scene's a hard life to maintain physical fitness because you eat garbage food and work shit shifts. And I'd
Mm.
done a like 15 or six, maybe, Jesus, in that year before that event, that interview, probably done 18 festivals
Mm.
on the bounce before turning up to this interview.
Mm.
And I was not in the best shape I'd ever been in, but being out there for 6 months, like it changed me
Didn't take long,
mentally
mate.
from a perspective of like,
That weight shed quick
um,
when you're out there
yeah,
in that
yeah, yeah,
freezing
yeah, yeah,
cold
yeah.
as well. You know what I mean? Like you're going to burn some
Well,
calories.
not just not just that, just the ethos of the French security staff and
Mm.
the guys I was working with. We would have joint training sessions. We would go to the gym together.
Oh yeah,
We,
yeah, yeah. But I mean, like
the guys.
you're going to lose in that environment. You're going to lose weight. Do you know what I mean? Like training and just in general, aren't you? It's like you're it's a different environment than the festival. You're not going to be out there eating like kebabs or what, burgers and stuff for the festival scene, is it? And then like sleeping in a tent and
No, no.
it's a harder
Um,
physically a harder environment, isn't it?
yeah, but from a perspective of like, once I was out there, I realized the level of like physicality that needed to be for that job.
Mm.
That's why a lot of these door staff, these French guys and stuff, they're in good shape. They understand that their body is part of what they have to do, and if
Mm.
they are not physically prepared for it, they're no good. So they are, all these, security staff out there. The majority of them that do these door shifts and these venues, they're in good shape. They are in the gym. They are training.
Mm.
A lot of them, they take that element very, very, which is in some respects a big difference. That's what I'm saying. It's a profession out there, and where it's not necessarily the same side of it is given to the UK. Whereas when they hold that in really high regard. So we would go. There'd be training sessions at the gym. We'd train with the French guys. We play basketball. Basketball's their big thing, so we play basketball with them. But then we'd set up like sparring training, boxing training, jiu-jitsu training. One of the guys who was the head doorman at the other club, he was like a K1 kickboxing champion or whatever. So he'd do kickboxing classes,
Mm.
and like that element of it was held in really high regard. That element was like a thing that, like, if you are an out of shape slob, you don't deserve to be in the security industry. You don't deserve to have a job here.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's what I say.
Um,
It's like all the guys that I'd ever seen out there, and anyone that I can think of, they all did some martial arts, and they're all
yeah,
like in the gym, and they're in shape. You know, yeah. That's the different thing, isn't it? Whereas like you over here, you can have a really out of shape doorman, or you can have like quite a small stature doorman. You know, never really see it out there. I didn't
no, no,
anyway.
it's no, no, it's unusual to say, like, and so, like, and when you are having to like physically fight with people, you know, I was doing 7 days a week, on
Mm.
this venue, and so when you're having to deal with altercations, most evenings. And yeah, there'll be people out there that turn around and go, well, that's probably our fault and blah, 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 blah. But you weren't there. You were not there. You didn't see it. You didn't have the same experience. And, um, you realize that you had to be in shape. You had to be of a certain mentality. I lost a little bit of the niceness about me, doing that job. And because you saw 7 days a week for months and months and months, the scummiest acts, the scummiest things, you know, we were targeted by people. We were, and again, these people turn up on a Saturday. They're there for their holiday. They cause a problem on the first day. You explain to them, you're going to cause this problem all week. You're not going to get in. Da 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 da.
Mm.
You'd really upset them, really piss them off. You know, um, and all week they would want to be a problem. You end up in physical altercations with them. You end up in verbal altercations with them. Whatever it is, you had to be switched on with it, and you had to be able to handle it when something happened.
Mm.
And you got to the point where our interactions most of the time, obviously we had a load of customers, and I won't be able to remember 90% of them, but I remember the 10% of people that were dickheads to us. I remember the people that were argumentative. I remember the people that were physically violent to us. I remember
Mm.
the people who were dangerous, and you deal with that 7 days a week, week in, week out. Then by Saturday, because there's no ramifications for their actions other than getting chucked out of the nightclub, having a fight. Everyone gets black and blue, cuts and bruises. All the issues that happen with it. And then on Saturday, they're going home. They don't care. Even if the police decide they want to press charge, or we want to press charges on some. We got to the point where you didn't press charges because there was no point, because French law meant that you had to press the charges, appear in court. They'd have to appear in court,
Mm.
and it just they were out of the country by the time that was an issue.
Yeah, yeah, that's it.
So yeah, it did. Ultimately, it changed my mentality massively.
Mm.
Um, and I say, like, you speak to the guys that knew me before, the guys that interviewed me, like I was the stereotypical, not the stereotypical, but like the typical kind of like um, professional, but from a perspective of British professional,
Mm.
wanting to be helpful, wanting to be like uh, customer service orientated. Try to help people. If you've been thrown out, all this stuff.
Mm.
Um, try to deal things in an English manner,
Mm.
and unfortunately, that didn't necessarily translate when dealing with French, Spanish, Russian, Scandinavian,
Mm.
customers.
No, that is the thing, isn't it? It's like it's just cultural differences, and the thing that will kind of like, if you do certain things to British customers to make your night easier, to make your job easier, if you do those same things to, like you say, the French, the Spanish, the Scandies, it's actually going to make your night harder. It's going to make it worse.
Yeah. Well, you try and be like a British, nicey nicey doorman to a Russian guy,
Oh
and
no, I'm sure it's
he ain't gonna stand for it. It's not. It's just
no.
not the way it is. Like you get walked all over,
Mm.
um, and that's what it hardened me as a person.
Mm.
Um, and I'm sure there's British guys out there that are going, yeah, the door hardened them, and etc etc. That's cool, but it was not the same as far as I was concerned. It was not the same thing. The interactions I had with door staff from the UK when I got home was not the level of conflict was just a different level of conflict.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like I'm sure there's some places in the UK that are like rough. Do you know what I mean? And the door, someone may be listening to this that works on that door in this rough place in the UK, and they go, "Oh, you think you had it harder? I've got it hard. No, the UK is hard." I'm sure there's like places where it is hard. It's not easy. I think more what we're trying to say is there's like a vibe. That's the thing. Is it not only is it tough in the Alps, and it's every night pretty much. Do you know what I mean? But it's like there's something about it. The je ne sais quoi, isn't it? That's it. It's like there's something different about them, because that, like I say, I didn't do the door in France, but I observed. You know, I was out there months and months and months and months doing this resort support, so I'm watching other door staff there. You know, I've been to that resort and to that club that you know worked at on the door, and I observed and saw what it was like and saw what happened, and some of the things that you know I'd seen out there, and I go, well, and then we'd come home, wouldn't we? And throughout summer, you know, when the ski season's off, we'd be doing all sorts of security jobs throughout the year. And granted, for me, those weren't doing the door. Like I don't and didn't do the door, but I was like, I don't feel as on edge in the UK as I do in the Alps. You know. Well, that being said, you remember I told you about that job I did. I forget actually. I probably did do 2 more door jobs than I remember. And you remember I said that I did that one that was the party, Tinchy Strider's birthday party or something.
Yeah.
In like, it was sold to me as like a CP job for Tinchy Strider's birthday party, and I turn up to this like bar in London. There's probably quite a like swanky bar, but it was like grime music was playing, and it was a proper like roadman night. It was pretty sketchy. Like it was pretty rough. But ultimately, even I think of that one, and I go, still wasn't as scary as the France. You know, it wasn't as like intense as some of the stuff that was going on in France.
Yeah. I mean, I think again, like the worst places I've worked in the UK, like I never felt the same level of threat in regards to the venue side of things. I mean, some of it's our safety net, our infrastructure. Say, like there is, there is the police around. There is, like a pretty responsive ambulance service for emergencies. Um, there is that sort of like, there's CCTV everywhere. There's a deterrent in the UK, and that deterrent didn't really exist so much out in the Alps for us, and even if there was an incident in the UK, like like you kind of get this thing of like, oh, there is some sort of like justice in there, and there wasn't that element of it because say like you know we had we had some pretty bad incidents out there, and it kind of just gets brushed off, and I mean don't get me wrong, like I'm sure there's things that happen in the UK that get brushed off, but the frequency of it was one of those things that I noticed, and also like the level of violence and aggression that we dealt with, and I think that's a thing across France. I don't necessarily just say it was an Alps thing. I think the thing with the Alps was that there was less ramifications for the actions in the context of there was no police around, there was no like CCTV, there wasn't any of that sort of stuff that was like I imagine most guys who are probably a bit older than us probably look at it and go, oh, that's how it was in the 90s in the UK, and that probably is fairly true, but
Oh
that's
yeah,
still how things.
I think UK door work was rough and hard in the 90s. I think
Yeah,
when I'm making this comparison, I'm talking about now times or the time that
yeah,
I
yeah,
was
of
doing
course,
it,
yeah,
which was like 2015 onwards, wasn't it?
yeah,
Um,
um,
but and then that's the other
but
thing.
yeah,
Like I wonder with what's going on. Obviously we've said there's people still going out there doing it now for a few companies that are doing it, and we haven't done it for a good few years now. The resort support anyway, for the students.
yeah, because I think just to sort of say, I don't think there's anybody that I know of in the it's a UK citizen with a UK security license kind of thing that is currently doing nightclub door work in a traditional door work fashion. because I just don't think you can get the license anymore. It's very, very difficult to get it now.
No, but I
Um,
mean, like even the ones going out doing the resort support,
yeah,
like this is the thing is like I want to be a fly on the wall or go out and see what's going on really because I'm from me going out there as resort support and like I say I know all of these things because I witnessed it. I didn't do the door, but I know all about the door, and there's no way they can go out there and not see these things and be sheltered from it and not be exposed to it unless they've changed the dynamic where they literally sit in the reception of the hotels and they don't go out on the
hotels.
street anymore. But if they are doing patrols out on the streets, there's no way they're not seeing this and coming across this stuff and getting involved and caught up in it. Like, unless the dynamic of the whole thing has changed. And then I see some of these people, I don't know them, I don't know maybe one or two, I kind of know, but I don't know most of them. And I'm like, you don't strike me as the type of person that is like cut out for this kind of thing. I don't know. That's what confuses me about it. Do you know what I mean? I'm going. Yeah, they don't seem to be coming back with the shell shock that we came back with. Do you know what I mean? They don't seem to be coming back
No, no,
changed.
but I mean, maybe in some respects that it's not that way anymore. I don't know. I mean,
Yeah,
if one of those people that is doing it now and has been out there and has done the result support in the last 2 years, hears this, they want to come and talk to us. By all means, come and talk to us,
yeah,
and we
I'd
can
be interested
compare what the things are like now. I don't know. I mean, um,
because
but
France ain't going to have changed.
no,
France and
France would have changed.
the ski resorts in France will not have changed. And I mean, because
No, no.
we were out there 2 years ago now.
2 years ago,
We
yeah, yeah.
weren't
So we
doing resort support, but we know France well enough to know that that's still the same. But the
yeah, yeah.
specific one doing it for students for that company, we haven't done that for a while.
No, no, no. But yeah, so maybe if somebody is doing it and they're out there. Yeah, I mean, what are we on now? The day, yeah, now, like literally now.
Yeah, there'll be some of them going
Is
out.
here's this? They want to come and talk to us. Contact us via Instagram or Facebook or something, and
Always the bad
we'll
guys at
come on.
gmail.com.
Always the bad guys at gmail.com.
Email is good.
And yeah, we can sit down and have a conversation and find out. But yeah, it's one of those things that and again, similar to any of the guys that I worked with, I can reach out to them and I'll ask, that I worked with on the door that want to come and chat to us, and by all means, we'll have you on, and because say like we've all kind of gone our separate ways now and whatever, but we can discuss because I think we were in a real we us few were in a very very sort of select few people who our timing just seemed to fall correct in the context of went out when we were still in the EU, got my accreditation, did the job for a few years. Things changed with the EU, obviously, which made things much more difficult. Um, but there was, I could probably count on my hands the amount of people that were given legitimate French security licenses to do that job and worked as nightclub doorman out in France. Um, so if again, they it's a very small alumni of people that managed to do that. So if they're out there and they want to talk to us, by all means.
I think we'll be able to get Phil on.
Yeah,
Phil will do it.
yeah, yeah. There's
And
Phil.
and then
I know of one other that ended up doing it out in a very different resort. We crossed paths later down the line, and he came and worked for us for a short period of time. He was out there in a different resort doing a very similar role. And then the guys that I worked with in my resort, they were about the only ones I knew of.
yeah, I think
So
no, because and that's the other thing as well is that like the people who have gone out there and done the resort support since we've stopped doing it, as time has gone on, less, the ones we knew carried on, and then less and less and less of them have done it. So now there seems to be like lots of new people going to do it that have never done it before. That's the thing that kind of like perplexes me or like intrigues me, or I want to know, is I'm kind of going like, has the dynamic changed within that job? Is the requirements
Yeah,
different?
maybe, maybe.
Um,
Yeah, yeah.
so
But yeah, we can, it's one of those things, isn't it? And it's not just, and ultimately, we haven't just done that job. We haven't, we've done jobs all over the world together,
oh
and
yeah.
there's, varying different avenues to what we did, and there was a time before I met you and a time after I met you, and
Mm,
kind of, expanded all over the place, haven't we? And done some varying different. But that period between like 2013 and to like 2019, 20 ish, that was when we worked really closely together, is when we experienced a lot of these interactions out in the French Alps and stuff. So it was quite a big chunk of our security career.
mm. Oh yeah, that was like the first. That was the foundation,
Yeah,
because so most of my career with you was doing that work. So that's where most of our kind of stories come from, is that time, and then that stopped for one reason or another, which we'll probably go into in a podcast one day and explain why we ended up not doing it. Um, and then yeah, so I suppose like 20. Well, nothing really happened 2020, did it? But we definitely weren't doing the resort support. Oh, from 2019, I think 2019 onwards.
2019. Yeah, 2019 we stopped doing it.
But over that time
2020
to
to
now,
2020. Over that time, yeah. So 2019 we stopped. To then sort of 2023 we did the Snowbox Festival together,
so yeah.
um, and you got very heavily involved in that with me. So
Mm. And then throughout that time, there was loads of other jobs we did as well, didn't we? That weren't Alpine
yeah,
related. They were UK, but other places around the world as well. So,
yeah,
and different
yeah, yeah,
types of jobs and stuff like that. So, and then we also
yeah,
lots of like medical work as well. That's the other thing that's quite interesting actually. Just
yeah,
focusing on the security work, but tons and tons of like medical jobs for like different companies as well. We did, didn't we?
yeah, yeah. Oh yeah.
Um,
Um, but
Plenty
yeah,
to touch on.
maybe we pick up on that. We do a medical discussion at some point, because
Medical one, yeah.
there's um, it's one of those things that the medical world's a slightly different animal as well, isn't it?
That's it. I think this episode's been very like the theory or the philosophy, the
Yeah,
psychology of French door work. I reckon we should do another episode, where we actually talk about, you know, because I think the thing with the stories is it basically just gives examples, because you can
yeah,
talk about it in theory, but ultimately it doesn't quite paint the picture. Then when you go, here's an example of something that happened. This happened at
yeah,
this time, and you go, oh, okay, I understand it now. So I think we should do some more of those, and we will. But also to I think mention before we finish is that you're going on a job abroad, aren't you?
I am. I am indeed. Yeah. So I'm going to try and do a podcast also on there, but I head out to Saudi Arabia next week.
Mm,
Um, I've, I've been providing my consultancy, as it were, of some way, shape, or form, to
mm,
a couple of events in Saudi Arabia. I leave next week. This will be my fourth time out in Saudi Arabia. I'm going out as a crowd manager,
mm,
because over my varying different uh, qualifications, etc., I went into crowd management, which can be a really exciting or really boring role, depending on how you look at it. But
yeah.
I'm going out to. I came back from Saudi Arabia in December. Um, I was part of a big festival out there. I was a crowd manager for the main stage of that festival. I've done that 2 years in a row now.
Mm,
And this time in January, I leave next week for a slightly smaller festival, but I've done it once before. out in Saudi. I'm going to Jeddah, um, and but yeah, we're gonna try and rig up this kit so we can do a remote one from Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll
And
see how the lag and the latency of the international
yeah,
internet connection goes. But
run run on the VPN.
on the VPN, you need to get a
Uh,
Starlink out. Get a Starlink,
yeah.
deploy that, and
But yeah,
then
so hopefully, hopefully the next podcast will be coming from Saudi Arabia.
that'd be sick.
And
Yeah, I'll
we'll
still be here freezing my nuts off in the UK, but you'll be
that's
nice
it.
and warm. Get a good view.
Yeah,
You need to get a good angle of your balcony in your apartment. Like,
yeah. Just one of those things of just to show that we don't just talk about it, we do actually do this stuff, like so.
yeah, exactly. So no, that'd be good. We'll try and do that.
Cool.
We'll try and do that.
Yeah,
Sweet.
brilliant.
Well, I think we'll wrap
Right,
it up
well,
for now.
cool. Well, I'll catch you shortly, mate.
Will do. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
See you next time.